The airport hangar fell silent the moment the wrench hit the concrete floor. Not because of the noise. Because of the laugh that came right after it. 30 feet away, under the bright white daylight pouring through the massive hangar doors, a billionaire CEO stood beside his private jet with folded arms and a smile that looked more like a challenge than amusement. Around him stood executives in dark suits, flight engineers, reporters, airport staff, and mechanics who had already spent 8 exhausting hours trying to solve a problem that had shut down a $12 million aircraft. And standing alone in front of all of them was a tired single father in worn-out work boots. His name was Rowan Mercer. His shirt sleeves were stained with grease. His eyes carried the kind of exhaustion only parents understood. And in his pocket sat a crumpled note from his 8-year-old daughter reminding him not to forget her school art show that evening. Before we continue, if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to The Dad Chronicles for more unforgettable stories. The billionaire CEO, Callan Voss, looked toward the crowd and made a bet that sent whispers through the entire hangar. $1 million. $1 million said this man couldn't fix the jet. 5 minutes later, something happened nobody would ever forget. Morning sunlight spilled across the airport tarmac outside the hangar. Aircraft rolled slowly across the distance while workers moved with practiced urgency. But inside, time felt frozen. The private jet sat like a wounded giant. Its polished body reflected the sunlight, but under the surface, something had gone terribly wrong. 3 specialist teams had examined it. Nothing. 2 senior engineers had flown in. Nothing. Computer systems showed conflicting readings. Fuel pressure looked normal. Hydraulic systems checked out. Electrical circuits appeared stable. Everything looked right. And yet every attempt to start the aircraft ended the same way. Failure. Callan Voss hated failure. At 48 years old, he had built one of the largest aviation technology companies in the country. Newspapers called him brilliant. Business magazines called him ruthless. Employees called him something else when he wasn't around. Callan believed every problem had a price. And he believed money solved everything. That morning he had arrived furious because a meeting worth hundreds of millions depended on this flight. His temper had spread through the hangar like wildfire. Then Rowan arrived. Not because he was called. Not because he was expected. Because his regular shift had started at 6 that morning. Rowan worked maintenance at the airport. Not for luxury aircraft. Not for executives. He fixed service vehicles, ground equipment, cargo systems, whatever broke. For 7 years he had worked every overtime shift he could get. Because after his wife Mara passed away 3 years earlier, there wasn't another choice. Cancer had moved faster than anyone expected. One winter morning she had kissed their daughter Nova on the forehead. 3 weeks later she was gone. The hospital bills remained. The loneliness remained. The empty side of the bed remained. But most of all, Nova remained. 8-year-old Nova with messy dark curls and oversized dreams. Nova who still sometimes woke up crying for her mother. Nova who still secretly placed an extra plate at dinner before remembering. Rowan learned quickly that grief didn't disappear. It simply sat beside you while life kept moving. He worked because he had to. He smiled because Nova needed him to. And every morning before school she left tiny notes in his lunchbox. You got this, Dad. Don't forget to smile. Mom says stars never really leave. Small notes. Tiny miracles. Rowan had been pushing a maintenance cart through the hangar when he noticed the crowd around the jet. He tried walking past. But years of experience made him stop. He listened. Then looked. Then listened again. His eyes narrowed. The sound wasn't right. The start-up sequence carried a strange rhythm. Not loud. Not obvious. Just wrong. He quietly mentioned it. One engineer laughed immediately. Another ignored him. But Callan heard. And Callan, already angry, turned toward the tired mechanic standing beside a cart of tools. You think you know something they don't? The question carried enough arrogance to fill the entire building. People looked at Rowan. He suddenly became very aware of his worn boots. Very aware of the grease stains on his shirt. Very aware that powerful people were staring. Rowan almost walked away. Almost. But Nova's school art show flashed through his mind. Her face. Her smile. The promise he'd made not to miss it. So he simply nodded. Callan stared. Then he smiled. Not kindly. The kind of smile people wear before humiliation. $1 million. If Rowan fixed it. Nothing if he failed. The crowd reacted immediately. Some laughed. Others pulled out phones. Rowan looked terrified. Not because of the money. Because everyone was watching. 5 minutes later Rowan climbed the aircraft ladder carrying only a flashlight and a small tool bag. Silence followed him. Inside the jet, Rowan moved slowly. Listening. Touching panels. Checking airflow. Watching indicators. Years ago his father taught him something while fixing old engines. Machines talked. Most people just didn't listen. Outside, Callan checked his watch impatiently. 3 minutes. 4 minutes. 5 minutes. People expected Rowan to emerge defeated. Instead he came back down. Calmly. He walked toward the maintenance cart. Picked up a simple screwdriver. Returned inside. 10 seconds later a metallic click echoed through the hangar. Then Rowan stepped out. Try now. Laughter erupted immediately. Someone actually shook their head. Callan looked almost offended. But he gestured toward the pilot anyway. Moments later the startup sequence began. People folded their arms. Waited. Expected another failure. Then the engines came alive. The sound exploded through the hangar. Powerful. Smooth. Perfect. Silence followed. Absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The aircraft systems lit up green. Everything worked. Everything. Callan stared like reality had betrayed him. Engineers looked stunned. Reporters forgot their cameras. And Rowan simply stood there awkwardly rubbing grease from his hands. Callan walked toward him slowly. What did you do? Rowan looked embarrassed. He explained that during startup he heard a vibration pattern that suggested a loose sensor relay behind an access panel. The system kept sending incorrect signals that created chain failures. One loose component. A 10-second fix. The crowd couldn't believe it. Neither could Callan. But what happened next mattered far more than the jet. Because Callan looked at Rowan differently now. For the first time all day, the billionaire saw him. Not the dirty uniform. Not the old boots. The man. The father. Later that afternoon Callan found Rowan sitting alone outside near the parking lot eating a cheap sandwich during lunch. Callan sat beside him. No cameras. No executives. No reporters. Just two men under warm daylight. And for a while they said nothing. Then Callan noticed the drawing sticking out of Rowan's pocket. Crayons. Bright colors. A picture of a man holding hands with a little girl under stars. My hero. Those words were written across the top. Something shifted inside Callan. Because despite all his money, all his success, all his victories, no one had ever drawn him that. No one. Years of chasing numbers suddenly felt painfully empty. That evening Callan transferred the $1 million. Rowan thought it was a mistake. Then another surprise came. Callan created a scholarship foundation in Mara's name for children of single parents. And he asked Rowan to lead it. Months later Rowan stood beside Nova at her school art show. She held his hand tightly. On the wall hung a new painting. It showed two people standing beneath stars again. Only this time there was another figure nearby. A man in a suit. Smiling. Nova looked up and asked if people could change. Rowan looked out the window where sunset painted the sky gold. Then he smiled. Because sometimes life doesn't change when money appears. Sometimes life changes when someone finally sees another person's worth. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Dad Chronicles. Stories like this remind us that ordinary people carry extraordinary strength. Special request, comment, kindness sees what money misses, if you believe every person deserves a second chance. And somewhere under the fading evening sky, a little girl squeezed her father's hand while stars quietly appeared one by one. Because some heroes never wear suits. Some walk into work with tired eyes, grease on their hands, and love in their hearts. And sometimes, that's more than enough.